Hello and good morning, fellow targeted individuals. Right when I'm making this video, the garbage man is picking up my trash. So I'm gonna share with you guys some things which are pretty trashy. And it involves people from sectors that we trust, which are doing things which present pre-terrorism indicators. I want to talk about a quiet danger. It's about how people who tell the truth can be targeted, and how the people doing the targeting can act in a self-sacrificial manner that harms communities. These people are known to open carry in states where there's no open carry laws. They're known to harass people in schools with deadly weapons, and deputies do nothing. The self-sacrificial logic of perpetrators is what I want to talk about. Some perpetrators act like they're giving themselves up for a cause. They may accept risk, attention, or punishment to keep the targeting going. They push harder even when it costs them, because their goal is control. This self-sacrifice is not noble. It's a tactic. It tells others, we will keep going no matter what. This encourages the target to go to cops, DOJ, the FBI, CIA, and other agencies to discover there is no investigations going to be conducted. This promotes learned helplessness, where the target then figures out ways to protect themselves, leading to an increase of potential harm. This activity spreads fear and keeps pressure on the target and even some community members that know about it but can't talk about it due to national security clauses and state laws. These perpetrators may show up repeatedly, take blame to protect the group behind them, or keep a pattern going in public places to prove they can. This makes the harassment look normal, constant, and hard to stop. This is the point, to make fear feel routine. So they want you to be in a state of fear. Another tactic is to fake or twist medical records. There have been countless times where I've had people that have come into places that have worked for the local FBI in Texas or CIA assets, which are everyday participants in FBI operations in many states in prior administrations. Whistleblowers can then be labeled as unstable, dangerous on paper, even when they're not. And typically what happens is people are recruited through a non-disclosure agreement. There's money involved. There's partnerships involved. If police partners or agents help create these records, those labels follow the person everywhere. Little secretive notes, which you can't access. You can access your medical records, but you can't access doctor's notes per U.S. law. People stop listening. Help is denied. Warnings are ignored. The truth is buried under a label once such characters get involved. When paperwork is used like a weapon, it becomes a wall, blocking care, blocking trust, and blocking safety. This hurts the whistleblower, and it teaches the public, speak up and you'll be discredited. Targeting doesn't stay private, it spills into daily life where we eat, walk, worship. When harassment shows up in public places, it becomes a health risk, and it becomes perceived as an extreme threat to the target. Constant fear raises stress. Stress harms the body. It can lead to sleep problems, heart strain, and mental health struggles. False records can block real medical help. People may be denied treatment or misdiagnosed when they're falsely labeled a pervert, an extremist, a terrorist, and so on. If stalking or intimidation happens at restaurants, sidewalks, or houses of worship, those places become risky. People that are targeted then avoid those places. Sometimes bystanders get pulled in and conflict can spread. When people see systems used to target someone, trust in police, hospitals, and schools, that trust starts to break down. This is not only about one person, it's about the safety of a whole community. The logic of terrorism, especially when scaled down to Micro-targeting with plausible deniability reflects a strategic blend of fear, manipulation, and narrative control. Here's a breakdown of why this logic is sometimes deployed in covert or institutional contexts. Micro-terrorism and the logic of deniability is seen in micro-scale attacks towards targets, whether reputational, digital, or physical. These tactics can be devastating because they're hard to trace. The attacker avoids direct confrontation at times, instead relying on tactics based on destabilizing the target. This mirrors the logic of terrorism, inflicting fear, provoking reaction, and obscuring responsibility. Targeting, sometimes, fellow TIs, when you see these people come at you with a group, they're coming with a gun, they just walk up to you and then leave, causes the target to live in such a state of fear that they relocate. And then when they relocate, it happens again. Terrorism is seen as a template in gang stalking operations. Terrorism describes a process where inflammatory rhetoric or covert pressure increases the likelihood of violence or sabotage without direct orders. Institutions or actors may use this logic to provoke outcomes while maintaining plausible deniability, outsourcing the act to proxies. Unstable individuals such as fringe groups or automated systems may be utilized. In cyberspace and covert operations, proxies are often used to carry out attacks that benefit the sponsor while shielding them from blame. This logic allows powerful actors to test boundaries, suppress dissent, or retaliate without triggering formal accountability. Narrative control and blame redirection is seen by those operating in the shadows. Perpetrators can shape public perception. The target may be discredited, isolated, or gaslit. When the attacker poses as neutral or even benevolent, this inversion of roles, villain as guardian, victim as threat, is a hallmark of symbolic warfare. Strategic silence and institutional incentives are apparent in gang stalking operations. When institutions adopt this logic, it often is because they're being paid. Micro-scale deniable attacks offer a way to solve problems for these threats. Whistleblowers, activists, dissenters are left with no way to counter these attacks because everything is done secretly. The system protects itself by eroding truth and amplifying confusion. How gang stalking resembles terrorism is apparent. Terrorism is about fear and control. It doesn't require bombs to work. If a group uses repeated pressure, fake records, public intimidation to silence truth, the effect is similar. Fear spreads, speech shrinks, and the community feels less free. The goal is to make people stop talking. The method is to make people feel unsafe. When perpetrators promote self-sacrifice to keep the pressure going, taking heat to keep the campaign alive, it strengthens that fear. It tells the target and the community, we will pay a price to keep you quiet. This is a dangerous message. And then right here in this same exact area, see where that red car is at? A car goes into my lane slightly. So I had to go off the road. And then it straightens back up, and the car behind it had a plate in the front that said STAHL. Well, that made me wonder, you know why? Because in a different town, I had an issue with a group called G4I Staffing, and it's owned by Style USA.
So I mentioned in another clip that I had a really weird experience with a company called G4I, then a car that had the words STAHL on the front of its car on one of these vanity plates. Well, I made this video recently, like 12 days ago, and the car that recently got into my lane and nearly ran me off the road was the same car that had passed by me at a place where I was at a lake. You'll hear the horn honk here in a moment.
So now you may understand how self-sacrificial logic, how people which masquerade behind patriotism and contracts and national security can abuse our system. See, our enemies, fellow TIs, are trying to control you, but in a sense, you have some power too, because if an agency is that scummy, where they would target somebody that doesn't have anything, doesn't own a house, doesn't have a wife, is losing their jobs, their computers are being hacked, they have no ties to terrorists, they don't use drugs, they don't have a large movement, then they're not a threat. And if they're utilizing veterans as a cover, that makes them complete scumbags. But you're going to utilize innocent people that are believing in our system, and you're going to lie to them and tell them, hey man, come over here and harass this guy, and then utilize our Lockheed Martin and different groups like select players when they're outside of work to go along with this, then you're not a good guy. Hold on 1 second. I got stung by a wasp later on. It's bothering me there. So our enemies, they want to make you feel uncomfortable in your environment. They want to facilitate an attack on our homeland by training people, telling them what to do. They're doing minor stuff, which that perpetrator knows will not get them harmed because the target isn't dangerous. But what they're not telling that perpetrator is that the target has been experiencing this on a daily basis. Let me give you an example, fellow TIs. Let's say right now I go to Aldi's in Orlando, Florida, or Clearmont, Florida, or Kissimmee, Florida, wherever. And I'm on the third aisle. And the exact moment I pass by this lady, she turns her head and goes, "Tss," and I see a little curly earpiece dangling down. And then every week I see that pattern. Or when I'm in line, it happens for a brief moment and I see certain people positioned in a configuration only seen at active shooter scenes. Now, that's power. To have some scumbags do this for like 20 years. When you're writing Congress saying, hey, I'm dealing with the terrorism threat. Now, these people are coming into schools harassing me. Now, how's it going to look, fellow TIs, if I ever reacted towards those which were doing this? They see black SUVs, somebody asking for help, with no ties to terrorism. Now, of course, I wouldn't react to that extreme. But that is what the enemy desires. They desire a reaction, and they don't want it to come back on them. They want to be perceived as being the good guys. Well, that is when the threat messes up to a degree where the harassment is transparent and where it's systematic, the enemy has to plant this image in the minds of others that you're a threat to justify ongoing harassment. When you gain proof of what they're doing, you're a threat. When you expose them, you're a threat. If you try to sue them, you're a threat. If you ask for your Privacy Act request, you're a threat. Because now you're promoting narrative control. You're sharing your story, and the enemy doesn't want that. So for that reason, you'll be harassed in restaurants where you eat. I have videos where I'm eating food with family, and they come in as a family with a black SUV, sit right next to my family, even with their kids. There are kids trained in this. There are women trained in this stuff. Elderly people that you would never suspect. They use people that would never be suspected in these psychological attacks.
Did you know that some 9/11 hijackers were victims of identity theft? Did you know that? Probably because they didn't tell you.
FBI Director Mueller, BBC News, and ABC have confirmed that 7 of the 19 Muslims whose mugshots were flashed around the world did not die in the 9/11 crashes. They are alive and well and are victims of identity theft. An 8th accused Muslim died 1 year before the 911 hijackings even occurred. Who stole their identities, and why isn't the FBI looking for them? If the hijackers really were Muslims, why would they steal the identities of fellow Muslims and implicate them? Wouldn't they be more likely to steal Israeli identities and put the blame on Israelis? If the hijackers were Israelis, wouldn't they be likely to steal the identities of Muslims and put the blame on Muslims?
The senior FBI leaders of our country told me unequivocally 2 of the attackers at 9/11 were on the payroll of the CIA. 2 of the lead attackers at 9/11 were on the payroll of the CIA. Let them explain that. Why wasn't that given to the American people? Why wasn't that told to Congress? Why weren't we informed? What were they doing?
You know I looked it up. Look, 2001. FBI chief raises new doubts over hijackers' identities. How many hijackers have used false identities? One of the hijackers killed in the attacks appears to be living in the Middle East. He didn't die. The Telegraph. All men from Saudi Arabia spoke about their shock of being mistakenly named by the FBI as suicide terrorists. None of the 4 are in the United States on September 11th, and all are alive in their home country. September 23rd, 2001. Well, they try to say this is all bullshit now, but clearly it wasn't bullshit then. But you know how they lie. Look, the Washington Post, some hijackers' identities uncertain. The Guardian, false identities mislead FBI. The FBI acknowledged yesterday that some of the terrorists involved in the attacks last week were using false identities. But why would the FBI be reporting this to the Guardian if it was all a lie? That's what they say now. So I looked up all their information. He lived in Saudi. He's a Saudi diplomat's son. This guy right here was alive in Morocco. Oh, this guy, don't worry about him. His passport was located. You know how the plane, you can't find the plane. They found the passport. Good job, guys. You know, the reason I'm telling you this is to expand your mind. The answers you're seeking, you're just not going to get it from your own government. You get some deception, confusion, a lot of division. The truth and answers, not a chance. Go right here to statenationalsrock.com where you can be the change you want to see. Read the About Us. See who we are. Check out our free education. And even better yet, go read these petitions. These petitions will blow your mind. All the crimes against humanity that the government's committing against we the people, it's right there with the evidence so you can track it down. You see, guys, I told you, State Nationals, we rock.
Charlie Kirk's assassination has deleted evidence that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson haven't mentioned once. This guy told the cops to arrest him so the shooter could have more time to get away. This guy was deployed for 9/11, deployed against Obama, for George Bush, and personally worked with senators and US congressmen. And he personally admitted it, and they wiped everything, but I downloaded it just before.
George Zinn. I've been deployed to a lot of campaigns. I just did a deployment last year. And you were out there knocking on doors and John McCain and whoever. So I went all the way to Vegas just to harass John Kerry's rally. Obviously you knew Orrin, Senator Hatch.
George Bush and McCain had the same donors. These donors, like Manafort, Berman, Ronald Weiser, they manipulate elections, create countries, and have personally admitted to taking money from all of these countries. And Zinn, the patsy, is an example of an actor they use.
I was deployed to Minnesota for the Norm Coleman campaign.
Zinn was deployed for Norm Coleman, who ran against the guy who was anti-war, who died 11 days before the election. George Bush and McCain, Obama's opponent, were also pro-war. Zinn was there for 9/11. Zinn was there for all this pro-war propaganda, and then was there when Charlie Kirk was killed after he told Trump not to invade Iran.
He was one of the only people to go to the president. A war with Iran is something that could really hurt our country. I mean, boy, that was an unpopular position, and he did it again.
And talked about the Epstein-Mossad connection.
Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine, and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies.
He did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times.
I have a full 27-minute video going over.
Erica knew Charlie would be, but he did not. Well, if she didn't know, someone else sure did. This post is up on X. You should go look at it. It's from the official Heritage Foundation. It says that a certain someone sent a letter of condolence to Charlie Kirk's family, praising him as a true friend. Do you guys see what date is up in the corner? Yeah. Kind of weird, eh? The letter says, "To the dear family members of Charlie Kirk, with deep sorrow and great pain, I received the devastating news of the unaliving of Charlie, solely because he was a clear and unwavering voice of truth." So by the way, I love my life, my mental health is great, and I have carbon monoxide detectors in my house.
We found the real shooter, yo. You have to watch this. Props to whoever made this. I'm baffled.
I was standing from probably the third row in the bottom. I saw hit, I heard the shot ring out. I looked to my left, and then I looked over to my right. I saw him slump over in his chair forward. He slumped over. He had blood coming from the left side of his neck down his shirt, and he slumped over and he was carried off. Get off me! Get off me!
Like, look at this. You see the actual bullet and the muzzle fire. Like, if that is not a literal smoking gun, I mean, you can see the bullet moving.
Gang violence. Great. Gang violence. Great.
Two, moving in the same thing, that angle makes sense. But I do know that this has 100% been staged now, because there is no way that you have this many fake shooters, 2 patsies, one on the roof that we're now trying to incriminate, and now we've got the real one. And I'm sorry, the main thing with this is I know that if I shoot a bullet straight, you're gonna go bam like that, not go sunk to the side. Ain't no way, this is fabrication, and you know who did it.
Charlie Kirk update. Remember the guy that was cheering in the crowd whenever Charlie got taken out? Candace Owens is trying to find out who he is, and we found him. I'm going to show you his Facebook page. Some crazy stuff is actually going on. Oh, we're not going to believe this. Tag Candace in the comments. You're not going to believe this. So first we found out who he was. It's this guy right here. We found his Facebook page. We also found his wife. She's updated her Facebook. She used to have a different picture right here. She changed it for some reason. But luckily, I took a screenshot. This is what it was before we found them. I stand with our greatest ally. Why'd you change your picture, Astrid? That's very anti-Semitic of you. Just wait, this isn't even the good stuff. You're not going to believe what I found here. Okay, so here's his Facebook. He's just got his pictures. He doesn't have any thing posted other than pictures. He was in the military, as you can see right here in his stormtrooper outfit, and he made this very anti-Semitic snowman. Since everyone's been searching the names in the Google Trends to see when our greatest ally has been searching these people, I went and put his name into the Google Trends. It translated into this alien language right here, and you'll never believe when he was being searched by our greatest ally. You can see right here when the operation first started, and this correlates with almost all the other people, okay? His name first got searched in July 17th, just like the other people, if y'all been following any of this stuff. And then the big news is right here, September 5th, his name was being searched. Why? Why was he being searched by our greatest ally on September 5th? And then it really started growing, and then it really started spiking right here on the 8th, 2 days before the event. Isn't that absolutely wild? Still being searched right here on the 9th, and then the 11th, and then it just drops off to Nothingville right here, September 27th. A little bit of searches, and this is after he could have possibly been spotted out by some of his friends and whatnot, his friends from overseas, obviously. Absolutely madness. And then this is when he's been found out again right here, and his search is going up. I guess that's the reason why his wife changed their background to no longer supporting our greatest ally. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section. Make sure you tag Candace so she sees this. Make sure you like and follow, and if you want to support, make sure you subscribe on Facebook.
Our enemies, fellow TIs, sometimes go into places and within a matter of a minute or two can convince somebody to do what they want. They may just flash a badge for a few seconds and say, hey, this guy's a terrorist, he's a sex offender, he's an evil person, we're trying to get him out of town. Well, you just walk past by him and whistle one time. And what they're not telling those people, fellow TIs, is that the action that they're doing could potentially get them harmed. So what the enemy does is they play games by utilizing people. Essentially, they play puppet master. And since they know that the local police are not going to put down their names because they can't by law due to national security laws, state laws, municipality laws, they know that you're screwed. So since they say it's an investigation erroneously, and they're mobbing you and are utilizing veterans tied to groups which have a mutual aid agreement, police wouldn't dare put their names on there because it would be a violation of the law. And this gray area of law allows for room for false flags, domestic terrorism. Our enemies, they seek to traumatize the targeted individual. During MK Ultra, Freemasons worked with the CIA to present different tactics which could cause altars to form. I don't have this issue, but there are some people which have been traumatized when they were younger. Maybe they were raped, maybe they were severely beaten. And these people, which are under a lot of stress, which are currently targeted, which have unresolved issues from their childhood, can develop different alters. These alters are essentially personalities, and there are people that are being tortured which have developed such. I have not seen it in the TI community that much, maybe like 20 cases since I've been a target since 1996 out of like, gosh, there's probably hundreds of thousands of us, way over, I'm sure it's over 500,000 by now, because 12 years ago there were reports of multi-stalking complaints, and this started around the same time Department of Homeland Security stated they wanted to hire 500,000 people to surveil the masses, and then all of a sudden there's DOJ's reporting over 500,000 complaints of multi-stalking, meaning 2 or 3 people were stalking somebody. That was unheard of prior. So now with the merger of different agencies and our surveillance state, there are people that are being harassed by people they don't know, they can't relate to. So the enemy will utilize people that you can't relate to. Let's say you're an African American woman. You may be harassed solely by Mexicans. And then what happens is that person develops a bias towards Mexicans. I've noticed it with a lot of African American women that are targeted. They continually talk about being harassed by elderly men that are white or African American or Mexican people. In my case, I'm a male and I've been harassed by women since my 20s to my 40s, and I'm finding they're always an 8A business vendor, somebody from the defense industry, retired CIA, retired US Air Force, retired Army, Navy, the same thing, sheriff association partners. In every single state, I've made affidavits which mention sheriff associations, Israelis, LGBT, transgender, veteran groups. When you look at our security apparatus, you see that veteran groups are partners. It's clearly stated on American Legion websites and VFW websites. Their thing is supporting national security. Here's what's really weird, fellow TIs. They're a clandestine agency. So if somebody says they support that agency, that's like their main thing to support, but what they're really saying is that they will do clandestine things for money. The people that our enemy will utilize are going to be people at times which really don't know what's going on. They have an assumption, they know they're doing something high risk, but since they're coming as a group of individuals, they know that the likelihood of something violent occurring is low. They also like to go into places where there's lots of cameras. In Texas and in other cities, they would show up upon arrival. So let's say I drove 180 miles. They would show up upon arrival to places. And what they would do, these perpetrators, was they would flag me. And they were tracking me through my phone. And a few times I found passive GPS tracking devices. You're not going to find these with these little $20, $30 RF detectors. No, it requires a manual inspection. If you locate one, never admit to finding one. Just say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see nothing at all. Just close the door. Because there have been people which have been arrested because they have found these devices, and these targets were being severely harassed, where they ate, where they shopped, or they did anything human, and they started searching their cars, and then when they found a black box or had somebody professional find one, it becomes a shock to know that the entire time you were being tracked like a rat. And not only were you being tracked, your rights were being violated because these people were clearly not trying to stop terrorism or crime. So when you look at the cases like Ernest Hemingway, actress Jean Seberg, Julia Davis, what you see is that these people were under a so-called investigation. DHS whistleblower Julia Davis was under an investigation for just whistleblowing. And that term investigation prevents our enemies from being prosecuted. It prevents their names from being placed on police forms, even if you're being harassed throughout the day. There are targets which are harassed where they buy food every single time, where they park their car, when they go to church, when they see a doctor's office, and so on. I have videos where they've driven to Mount Dora, Florida, not now, but in the past, and it would be a veteran. I have the tag, his VIN number, a picture of his face. He arrives as I do, and he asks the hostess to whistle close to my face. This happened in Clearmont, Florida. It was a group of veterans driving a fleet of silver cars. There's witnesses, there's people that said that a guy from that group asked a cashier to do this. I go to a Mexican restaurant in Winter Garden, Florida. I don't even live there. And the waitress there told me that the guy gave her money and asked him to whistle close to my face, flashed a badge, said I was a dangerous person, to do that to get me out of there. So people will easily go along with this. And sometimes these people really aren't cops. They're not even investigators. They just have a little badge because they belong to some type of security group. They're a contractor, and they use that as a mechanism to have narrative control, to have power over the person they're trying to use. And their thing is, once they use you, they're going to most likely walk away, or if they stay around, it's because they expect a reaction. So they use people in your environment, and they sit around and pretend like they're the good guy, when the entire time they were the scumbag behind this. When I noticed this the first time, this guy had pulled aside my waiter and took her to the corner where there was a restroom. You know why? Because I've seen him looking around, and he noticed a camera. He did not want to be implemented. So they do things so that way when you're faced a certain way, when they talk to you, they see no camera can record, and there's no evidence. So they do things which are very mediocre, little skits, which are systematic. And what they're hoping is that one of these skits, well, let's say somebody's walking and they do something the exact moment they pass by you. It may not be a skit, but let's say you've noticed this pattern where somebody's doing the same thing only when they pass by you. Let me give you an example. Let's say every single time you take a walk, somebody with a purple, like with a pen with a purple top, throws it to the side of the ground only when they pass by you. Well, after a while, you clearly know that that person that is passing by you with the purple pen is trying to sensitize you and trying to annoy you. You're on a 5-mile walking trail, and the exact moment you pass by a certain area, somebody throws a purple pen. That's to get you annoyed. This is all an example. And then after a while, seeing that same pattern, they know that the target knows what's going on. But those that are with you would never know, because they've only seen that one time, or maybe they didn't even realize it. They didn't look to the side, but you did. You seen it. But the people next to you, they're focused on what's ahead. They're not in a state of hyper awareness where you are more observant around of your surroundings than the average person. So hyper awareness is essentially a state of hypnosis. Did you know that? Let's say right now you're in a war like the Vietnam War. Got bullets flying by you. You're going to be in a state of hyper awareness. So when you are in the bush and you got bullets flying by you and stuff, it doesn't mean you're mentally ill, but it is essentially, it can be like a state of trance almost for some people. They develop PTSD. Some people can snap out of it, but for some people it's a lifelong issue. So the people that are doing this, they don't tend to think on about their safety sometimes. Most do, but there are some that don't. And they fear for their life, but they do this because the money is good. And they assume that they're going to be protected from any type of liability. These activities are based on clandestine acts. And if you're experiencing it and you're seeing veterans supporting it, it can really let you down, especially when you see its neighbors. And a lot of times these neighbors are just told bad things about you. They get their numbers through civic groups, veteran groups, community partnerships. And when you're tracked, they simply call these people and say, well, the guy's about to pass by, put on a blue shirt, a black shirt, and pass by him and whistle. Go to your mailbox. There was a time where anytime I exited the residential area, there's a guy, he's the only one on the right side of the road that has a U.S. flag outside of his house. And right across the street from him is a cop, also with the U.S. flag outside of his house. They both have a pole with a flag on it. So when I would go e-biking on the bike trail, he would walk out of his house with a blue shirt. It didn't matter if it was 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So one day I confronted him and I was really polite and I started talking to neighbors and they started telling me what was going on. I was being slandered. And this is what gave them away when they confronted me. A car, and I live in a highly rural area, a car with a U.S. government plate pulled off the side of the road. Then a blue golf cart showed up at the front and a group of people all wearing blue confronted me. So after that, I started buying blue t-shirts. So when I go biking, if they wanted to play that game, it's like, hey, I can wear blue too. Excuse me. So I started noticing something very unusual, that when I went biking, once I would get to the front entrance of where I live at, there'd be somebody nearby the front entrance wearing blue on each side or crossing paths, like very synchronized, one this way, one that way. So I didn't think nothing of it until one day I was getting close to the front entrance of where I live at, and I seen people being dropped off wearing blue, and then I seen a U.S. government tag. That is when I knew that something wasn't right, because I had seen a pattern. At first, I just shrugged it off as a coincidence, but then when I started talking to people, and then one day I seen a guy, he looked 100% Jewish, and I opened the garage, I get my e-bike out of there, and I see this guy, I get a stingray alert, and then I see him park in my neighbor's driveway. I see a U.S. government tag, and then he reverses, and then he leaves. So I started getting harassed at restaurants, and then the next day, typically, or 2 or 3 days later, these people which harassed me would show up at places where I was at, where nobody else was at. So when I lived in Texas, these people that wore black suits and drove black SUVs, they would go into restaurants, businesses, and flash an ID, offer money. And when I would talk to these people, they would tell me, look, I was offered $50, $80. And they were just simply told, hey, pass by my buddy and whistle. And then they would pass by with their plates. When they're passing by me to deliver it to some table, they would do it. And I would see them at the door smiling, wearing black suits and thin black ties, like they were some type of men in black. But these guys, feel like TIs that I dealt with, these guys were from Virginia a few times. And what's really odd is that when I examined the areas they were coming from, it's typically in proximity to places where the only groups that are there are people that are tied to DOD, NSA, CIA, or FBI. It's a real shock, fellow TIs, to know that within our system that we have an element which would support false flags, domestic terrorism, and then try to label their acts as being based on counterterrorism, and then utilizing people that are foolish enough to believe that what they're doing supports national security. They're dealing with people with no ties to terrorists, with no $5,000 a month pension like them. They don't have kids or family. They're these people are asking for help and then being denied. And then I'm supposed to respect these people. So I'm saving up money. I'm looking at leaving fellow TIs. I have no interest in raising a family here, buying a house in America. I have no interest at all. My only interest is how I can leave this country and live my life and live in a country where I'm supported by the government and the people. I don't want to live in a government where the government pretends to support the Constitution, but there's all these laws which make it where they're under immunity and they can do whatever they want and they can get away with it. And there's no investigation. No, that's not fairness. That's not justice. That's being corrupt and being a hypocrite. So anyways, peace.